The Great Hall of Station Meridian was the largest room ever built in known space. It floated at the center of the galaxy, far from any star or planet, a neutral place where all species could meet without fear. The walls were made of crystal that showed the stars outside, and the floor was smooth black stone brought from a dead world. 17 different species had sent their representatives here today, and the air was thick with tension. Una Park stood near the back of the human section, watching everything with quiet eyes. She was not tall. Among the aliens in this room, she looked almost like a child. The Vicari ambassador stood 7 feet high, his insect body covered in hard green shell, his forearms folded across his chest. The Kovathi delegate was even bigger, a creature covered in brown fur with 6 eyes that moved independently, watching everything at once. Next to these beings, Una looked small and weak, but she was not worried. She had learned long ago that size meant very little. Beside her stood Dohan Lee, a captain in Earth's diplomatic fleet. He was taller than Una, but still short by galactic standards. His face showed his frustration clearly as he watched the other delegates talk and argue. "They put us in the back," he said quietly, behind the Nabari. Una glanced at the small creatures sitting in front of them. The Nabari were scavengers, tiny beings with large eyes who survived by eating what other predators left behind. They were considered one of the weakest species in the galaxy. "It does not matter where we sit," Una said. "What matters is what we know." The great debate had been going on for 3 hours now. Every year, the Galactic Council held this summit to discuss one important question: which species was the greatest predator in the galaxy? It was not just a matter of pride. The species ranked highest in the predator hierarchy received the most respect, the best trade deals, and the strongest voice in galactic politics. Council of Rin, a massive reptile with scales the color of old blood, sat at the center of the hall on a raised platform. He was the chairperson, chosen because his species was considered neutral in the debate. His tail, thick as a tree trunk, curled around his seat as he listened to the arguments. "The Vicari are clearly superior," Ambassador Trill was saying, his mandibles clicking with each word. He had been speaking for nearly 20 minutes, showing holographic images of his people hunting on their home world. "Our success rate is 94%. When a Vicari hunts, the prey dies. It is simple mathematics." The Kovathi delegate made a sound of disgust. "Success rate means nothing. A creature that hunts small insects can have perfect success. Does that make it a great predator? No. What matters is the size of the prey. We Kovathi hunt megafauna, creatures that weigh 10,000 kilograms. Creatures that could crush your entire species under 1 foot. Size is not everything," countered the Thrall representative, a pale being that seemed to shimmer at the edges. The Thrall were pack hunters who shared thoughts with each other. When one Thrall hunted, all Thrall hunted together, their minds connected across vast distances. Coordination is the true measure of a predator. One hunter is nothing. 1,000 hunters acting as one mind, that is power. The arguments continued, growing louder and more heated. The Morvax, who lived in water and lured prey with glowing lights, claimed that aquatic hunting was more difficult and therefore more impressive. The Vorn, who hunted in complete darkness using sound alone, argued that sensory ability should be weighted heavily. Everyone had their own criteria, their own reasons why their species deserved to be ranked highest. Why Yuan watched it all with a small smile on her face. "What are you thinking?" Dohan asked. "I am thinking that they do not understand what they are looking at," she said. "They look at us and see a small species from a yellow star. They see our bodies, which are slow and weak compared to theirs. They see that we have no claws, no venom, no natural armor. And they think they understand what we are. They ranked us in the bottom third," Dohan said bitterly. "Below the Kovathi, below the Thrall, even below the Morvacs. They called us persistent predators with limited range. Yes, Una said. That is what they see when they look at our biology. They do not see our history. On the main stage, the debate had become an argument. The Vakari ambassador was now openly insulting the Kovathi, suggesting that any species that needed to hunt in packs was admitting weakness. The Kovathi responded by questioning the intelligence of a species that still relied on mandibles to eat. Council of Rin was struggling to maintain order, his massive tail thumping against the floor as he called for calm. The other species watched with varying degrees of interest. Some seemed amused. Others were bored. The Nabari in front of the humans were barely paying attention, their large eyes drooping with sleep. Nobody was paying attention to the humans at all, Dodd. This was exactly what Una had expected. Humanity had only recently been granted observer status at these meetings. They were not allowed to vote, not allowed to make proposals, barely allowed to speak unless directly addressed. The galactic community saw them as newcomers, primitives who had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Their opinion was not considered important. But Una had spent years preparing for this moment. She had studied every species in this room. She knew their histories, their hunting methods, their greatest kills, and their worst defeats. More importantly, she knew what they did not know about humanity. They think predation is about biology, she said quietly to Dowan. About teeth and claws and venom. They do not understand that predation can be about something else entirely. What do you mean? They will understand soon enough. Council of Rin finally restored order by threatening to end the session entirely. The delegates settled back into their seats, still glaring at each other but no longer shouting. The Great Hall fell into an uneasy silence. We will take a short break, Rin announced. When we return, we will hear from species that have not yet spoken. His 6 eyes scanned the room, passing over the human delegation without stopping. Perhaps fresh perspectives will help us find common ground. Una straightened in her seat. The time was coming. Soon, they would ask the humans to speak, if only to fill time. And when they did, she would ask them one simple question, a question that would change everything they thought they knew about predators. The break lasted only 15 minutes, but it felt much longer. Delegates from different species gathered in small groups, whispering to each other in languages that the translation devices struggled to interpret. Alliances were being formed and broken in those quiet conversations. Promises were being made. Threats were being implied. Una used the time to review her notes one final time. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, ever since humanity had first made contact with the galactic community. In that time, she had learned something important. The galaxy feared predators, but it did not understand them. Not really. When Council of Rin called the session back to order, the tension in the room had grown even thicker. The Vakari and Korvati delegations sat on opposite sides of the hall now, refusing to look at each other. The Thrall representative had moved closer to the Morvacs, suggesting some kind of alliance was forming. Politics was happening beneath the surface of the debate. Invisible currents that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. We will now hear from species that have not yet presented their arguments, Rin announced. His voice was tired. He had been moderating these debates for decades, and they always ended the same way, with no agreement and much anger. Let us begin with the Vorath. The Vorath were ambush predators, patient hunters who could wait motionless for days before striking. Their representative spoke for 10 minutes about the virtue of patience, the efficiency of the surprise attack, the low energy cost of waiting versus chasing. The other delegates listened politely, but without much interest. The Vorath were not serious contenders for the top ranking. Next came the Puani, flying predators who hunted from the sky. They spoke of the advantage of aerial attack, the terror of prey that could not escape by running. the beauty of the diving strike. Again, the other delegates nodded, but did not seem impressed. As each minor species spoke, Yuna noticed something interesting. The major predator species, the Vikari, the Korvathi, the Thrall, were not really listening. They were waiting for the minor species to finish so they could return to their argument with each other. To them, this was just a pause in the real debate. They did not notice how Dowan was preparing a new holographic display. They did not notice how Yuna was sitting straighter in her seat, her eyes sharp and focused. They were not paying attention to the humans at all. Now, Vryn said, checking his list, we will hear from the human delegation. You have been granted observer status, so your input is welcome, though you may not vote on final rankings. The way he said it made clear that human input was not expected to matter. It was a courtesy, nothing more. A chance for the primitive newcomers to feel included. Yuna did not stand. Not yet. She wanted them to underestimate her for just a little longer. Thank you, counselor, she said from her seat. I would like to hear more about the ranking criteria before I speak. Can someone explain exactly what factors are being measured? Vryn seemed surprised by the question. The criteria are standard. Hunting success rate, prey size and difficulty, solitary versus pack hunting efficiency, sensory capabilities, kill methods, territorial control. I see, Yuna said. And these metrics are based on natural hunting behavior? Wild hunting, I mean. Animals hunting animals in their natural environments? Of course, said Ambassador Trill, his mandibles clicking impatiently. What other kind of hunting is there? Yuna smiled but did not answer. The humans are wasting our time, the Korvathi delegate growled. Everyone knows they are persistent predators. They chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. Effective on their homeworld, perhaps, but hardly impressive by galactic standards. A child could outrun them. Several delegates laughed. The sound was not kind. It is true, Trill agreed. Human biology is not designed for efficient predation. No claws, no venom, no natural weapons of any kind. Their teeth are flat, designed for plants as much as meat. They cannot see in darkness. They cannot hear ultrasonic frequencies. They cannot smell prey from great distances. By any objective measure, humans are barely predators at all. More laughter. The Nabari in front of Yuna turned around and looked at her with something like sympathy. Even the lowest-ranked species felt sorry for the humans. Dowan's hands were clenched into fists, but Yuna touched his arm gently. Let them finish, she said quietly. They're almost done. On the main stage, Vryn was nodding along with the criticism. The human classification seems appropriate. Persistence hunting is a valid strategy, but it does not compare to the hunting methods of more advanced predator species. Unless the human delegation has evidence to challenge their ranking, I suggest we move on. This was the moment. Yuna stood slowly, drawing the attention of the room. She was the smallest person in the hall, a tiny figure among giants. The delegates watched her with amusement, expecting either a weak defense or a quiet acceptance of humanity's low status. I have a question, Yuna said. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying easily through the great hall. A simple question about your ranking system. Vryn waved a massive hand. Ask, when you measure predator efficiency, Yuna said, when you calculate hunting success and territorial control and all these other factors. Are you counting trained predators or feral ones? The hall went silent. Not the comfortable silence of agreement, but the confused silence of people who did not understand what they had just heard. I do not understand the question, Vryn said slowly. On Earth, Yuna explained, we make a distinction between feral predators and trained ones. A feral predator hunts by instinct. It kills when it is hungry. It survives as nature designed it to survive. But a trained predator is different. She paused, looking around the room at the confused faces of 17 different species. A trained predator kills on command. It kills for reasons that have nothing to do with hunger. It kills efficiently, systematically, and completely. Not because it needs to, but because it has been taught to. Ambassador Trill's mandibles had stopped moving entirely. I asked this question, Una continued, because all of your metrics seem to assume natural predation, hunting as animals do in the wild. But humans have not been feral predators for a very long time. We stopped hunting by instinct 12,000 years ago. She let the words hang in the air. We domesticated ourselves. And then we got to work. The silence in the Great Hall was complete. 17 species, hundreds of delegates, all staring at the small human woman who had just said something none of them understood. Una stood calmly at the center of their attention, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for the confusion to settle. Councillor Vryn was the first to speak. His massive reptilian head tilted to one side, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. I still do not understand. What do you mean by trained? How can a species train itself? Perhaps I should demonstrate, Una said. She nodded to Dowan, who activated the holographic display they had prepared. An image appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a creature that most of the delegates had never seen before, a wolf. The animal was lean and gray, its yellow eyes sharp, its teeth visible in a silent snarl. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Even in holographic form, the wolf looked dangerous. This is a wolf, Una explained. It is a predator from Earth. Approximately 40,000 years ago, wolves were one of humanity's primary competitors. They hunted the same prey we did. They competed for the same territory. They were strong and fast and worked in coordinated packs. She paused to let the delegates study the image. By any measure, wolves were superior predators to humans. They could run faster. They could smell prey from miles away. They had teeth and claws designed for killing. In a direct fight, a wolf would defeat a human almost every time. The Kovathi delegate nodded approvingly. A worthy predator. What happened to them? Did you drive them to extinction? No, Una said. We did something much more interesting. The holographic image changed. Now it showed a dog, a golden retriever, sitting happily next to a human child. The contrast with the wolf was shocking. This creature looked soft and friendly, its tongue hanging out of its mouth, its tail wagging with obvious joy. We captured wolves, Una continued. We bred them for traits we wanted. Over thousands of years, we transformed them into hundreds of different variants. Some were bred for hunting, some for guarding, some for herding other animals, some simply for companionship. Another image change. Now the display showed dozens of different dog breeds. Massive mastiffs bred for war, tiny terriers bred for hunting rats, sleek greyhounds bred for speed, powerful bulldogs bred for fighting. The delegates watched in growing confusion. We took a competing predator, Una said, and we made it into a tool, a weapon, a servant. The wolf became whatever we needed it to be. Ambassador Trill's mandibles clicked nervously. This is interesting biology. But how does it relate to predator rankings? We are measuring hunting ability, not domestication skills. That is exactly my point, Una said. You are measuring the wrong thing. She gestured, and the holographic display changed again. This time, it showed a human hunter, a man from ancient times carrying a spear. Beside him walked several dogs, their ears alert, their noses testing the wind. When humans hunt with dogs, Una explained, who is the predator? The human cannot smell the prey. The human cannot run as fast as the prey. But the human decides when to hunt, where to hunt, what to hunt. The human gives the commands. The dogs obey. She looked around the room slowly, meeting as many eyes as she could. We do not hunt alongside animals. We hunt through them. We use them as extensions of our will. And we have been doing this for 40,000 years, with dozens of different species. A new image appeared, a falcon perched on a human's arm, a leather hood covering its eyes. We trained birds to hunt for us, Una said. We captured the fastest flyers in our sky and taught them to kill prey and bring it back to us. We did not need to fly ourselves. We simply trained creatures that could fly. The Polani delegation, the flying predators who had spoken earlier, was now watching with intense focus. Their representative leaned forward, feathers ruffling with agitation. Another image. Horses carrying armored knights into battle. We trained animals to carry us into combat, Una continued. Animals that could run faster than any human, that could trample enemies under their feet. We covered them in armor and rode them across continents. The images kept changing. Elephants used in ancient warfare. Carrier pigeons used for communication. Cats kept to hunt mice. Ferrets trained to chase rabbits from their burrows. Every predator species you have described today, Una said, hunts using its own body, its own teeth, its own claws, its own senses. You are measuring what you were born with. But humans stopped relying on what we were born with a very long time ago. She paused to let the words sink in. We looked at the natural world and we saw tools. Every predator became a potential weapon. Every prey animal became a potential food source, not just for hunting, but for farming. We did not adapt to our environment. We made our environment adapt to us. Councillor Vrin's scales had changed color, shifting from dark red to a pale orange that the translation systems identified as deep unease. You are saying that humans do not hunt naturally? That you use servants? I am saying, Una replied, that your entire ranking system is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. You measure natural predation because that is all you know. Your species hunt the way evolution designed you to hunt. But humans evolved differently. We evolved to think, to plan, to train. She smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. You asked about persistence hunting. Yes, we can chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. That is what we do when we choose to hunt fairly, when we want to give the prey a chance. But when we do not want to be fair, Dawan activated a new display. This one showed a map of Earth with red zones spreading across every continent. We have other methods. The red zones represented extinction events, species that had vanished after humans arrived in new territories. The numbers scroll past. 60% of large mammals, 40% of bird species, countless others. We did not hunt these species to extinction one by one, Una said quietly. We changed their environments. We burned their forests. We drained their waters. We introduced new predators that we controlled. We did not need to be faster or stronger or better adapted. We simply needed to be more systematic. The Great Hall was completely silent now. Every delegate was staring at the map, watching the red zone spread like a disease across the blue and green world. This is what trained predators do, Una said. We do not just kill prey. We remove species from existence, permanently, completely, and we do it on purpose. She turned to face Ambassador Trill directly. Your hunting success rate is 94%. Very impressive. But can you tell me, how many species have the Vakari driven to complete extinction? Not reduced, not endangered, extinct, gone forever. Trill did not answer. His mandibles hung open, frozen in what might have been shock. Because humans, Una continued, have done it hundreds of times. Sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose. And we have only been a spacefaring species for 200 years. She let the silence stretch for a long moment. Now, Do you understand my question? Are you measuring trained predators or feral ones? Because if you are only measuring feral predators, then yes, humans are unremarkable. But if you are measuring what a species can actually do when it decides to remove a threat, she smiled again. That cold smile that made several delegates look away. Then I think you need to reconsider your rankings. Nobody spoke for a long time. The delegates sat in their seats, staring at the holographic map of Earth that still floated in the center of the hall. The red zones pulsed gently, marking the graves of species that no longer existed. The numbers were still scrolling, names of creatures that had lived for millions of years and then vanished within a few generations of human contact. Finally, the Kovati delegate broke the silence. His 6 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of deep distress in his species. "This must be exaggerated," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No species could cause so much destruction. Not without advanced technology. Not without weapons capable of—" "We did most of this before we had advanced technology," Dohan interrupted. He stood beside Yuna now, controlling the holographic display. The largest extinction events happened when humans were still using stone tools. Spears and fire. That was all we needed. He changed the display to show a timeline. Images appeared of ancient humans, dressed in animal skins, carrying simple weapons. They looked primitive. They looked weak. But the timeline showed what happened wherever they went. Megafauna populations collapsing, forests burning, landscapes transforming. "Mammoths," Dohan said, as an image of the massive creature appeared. "They survived ice ages. They survived predators with teeth longer than human arms. They did not survive us." The image changed to show giant ground sloths, cave bears, saber-toothed cats. One by one, the creatures faded from the display. "All extinct," Dohan continued. "Not because we were faster or stronger. Because we were patient. Because we planned. Because we taught our children to hunt the same way we did, and they taught their children. And over generations, we simply wore these species down until nothing was left." The Thrall representative, the telepathic pack hunter, spoke for the first time since Yuna's question. "You are describing genocide. The deliberate destruction of entire species. This is monstrous." "Yes," Yuna agreed calmly. "It is. We are not proud of all of it." "But you asked about predator hierarchies. You asked who the greatest hunters were. And I'm telling you, the answer is more complicated than you thought." She nodded to Dohan, who brought up a new set of images. These were not of extinct animals. These were of humans. "We also hunt ourselves," Yuna said. "We have specialized groups trained specifically to kill other humans. We call them soldiers." The images showed human warriors throughout history. Ancient soldiers with swords and shields. Medieval knights on horseback. Modern troops with rifles and body armor. The equipment changed, but the concept remained the same. Humans organized and trained to kill efficiently. Currently, Yuna continued, Earth is approximately 8 billion humans. Among them are millions of trained soldiers organized into coordinated groups. Some groups are small, designed for stealth and precision. Some groups number in the hundreds of thousands, capable of sustained combat across entire continents. Councillor Vrin's voice was almost a whisper. "You train millions of your own species to kill?" "We train everyone," Yuna said. "Soldiers are just the specialists. But nearly all humans learn some form of combat during their lives. We practice it as sport. We simulate it in games. By the time a human reaches adulthood, they have practiced the movements of killing thousands of times, even if they have never actually killed anything." She gestured at the display, which now showed children playing. They were engaged in games that, on closer inspection, were simulations of hunting and combat. Tag was practice for chasing prey. Hide and seek was practice for stalking and ambush. Video games showed realistic combat scenarios. Our children begin training almost from birth, Yuna explained. We do not think of it as training. We call it play. But the skills they learn tracking, stealth, coordination, strategy, these are the skills of predators. The Vakari ambassador finally spoke. His voice was different now, quieter and more careful. You mentioned tools earlier. Weapons. Can you explain what kind of weapons humans use? Yuna smiled, but there was no humor in it. Certainly. The holographic display changed again. It showed a human throwing a rock, then a human with a spear, then a human with a bow and arrow. Each weapon allowed killing from greater distance, with greater accuracy. First we learned to throw, Yuna said. Then we learned to extend our reach. Then we learned to store energy in bent wood and release it suddenly. These were our first ranged weapons. The images advanced through history. Crossbows, cannons, rifles, machine guns. We learned to use explosive force, Yuna continued. We learned to kill from distances that prey could not see. We learned to kill faster than any natural predator could possibly match. The display showed modern warfare. Tanks rolling across fields, jets screaming through skies, missiles launching from submarines thousands of miles away from their targets. Today, we can kill from the other side of our planet, Yuna said. We have weapons that do not require a human to be present at all. They fly through the air, guided by machines, and destroy targets that no human eye has ever seen. The hall was utterly silent. And this is not even our most dangerous capability, Yuna added. Dalhuan brought up a final category of images. These were not weapons in the traditional sense. They were laboratories, microscopes, test tubes filled with cultures. We have learned to hunt at the microscopic level, Yuna said. We breed bacteria. We design viruses. We can create living weapons that multiply themselves. That spread through populations without any human having to pull a trigger. The Kovati delegate's fur had gone flat against his body, a sign of extreme fear. Biological weapons. You are talking about plague. We have used them against ourselves, Yuna confirmed. In wars between human nations. We have also used them against other species invasive creatures that threatened our food supplies, pests that carried diseases. We can target specific species while leaving others untouched. She paused to let this information settle. Do you understand now why your rankings confuse us? You measure hunting success based on individual kills. You count how many animals a Vakari can catch in a day. But humans do not think in terms of individual kills. We think in terms of campaigns, wars, extinctions. The holographic display returned to the map of Earth, still showing those red zones of disappeared species. 60% of large mammals eliminated after human migration, Yuna repeated. 40% of bird species. Countless fish, reptiles, amphibians, insects. And we did this before we had metal tools. Before we had writing. Before we had any of the technology that makes modern humans so effective. She looked around the room slowly. Now we have cities that hold tens of millions of individuals. We have communication networks that span our entire planet. We have weapons that can destroy everything on our world in less than an hour. And we have just begun exploring space. The last image showed Earth from orbit. A blue and white marble floating in darkness. Beautiful and peaceful. That is our home, Yuna said quietly. The place where we learn to be what we are. Every other species on that world either serves us, tolerates us, or has been eliminated by us. There are no competitors left. We are the only predator that matters. She turned back to face the delegates directly. So when you rank predator species, When you debate who's the most dangerous hunter in the galaxy, I want you to remember something. You are measuring what you were born to do. Humans measure what we have taught ourselves to do. And we have been teaching ourselves for 12,000 years. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but it carried perfectly in the silent hall. We are very good students. The great hall remained frozen in silence for what felt like hours. Delegates who had argued passionately about hunting success rates and prey size now sat motionless in their seats, processing what they had just heard. The holographic display still showed Earth floating peacefully in space. That small blue world that had produced something none of them had expected. Council of Rin was the first to move. He shifted his massive body on his platform, his scales rippling with colors that the translation system struggled to interpret. Fear and confusion and something else respect, perhaps, or maybe just the recognition of a threat he had completely underestimated. Lieutenant Park, he said slowly, choosing his words with obvious care. Are you telling us that humanity considers itself the apex predator of your planet? No, Yuna said. I am telling you that there is no debate about it. We are not the apex predator. We are the only predator that matters. Every other species on Earth exists because we allow it to exist. When we decide a species should end, it ends. When we decide a species should spread, we carry it across continents. We are not part of the food chain anymore. We control it. Ambassador Trill's mandibles finally began moving again, clicking softly as he processed this information. But you are so small. Your bodies are fragile. A single Vicari could kill dozens of humans in direct combat. Perhaps, Yuna agreed. If the humans chose to fight you directly, with no weapons, no coordination, no plan. But humans would never choose that. We would study you first, learn your weaknesses, develop tools specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses, train specialists to use those tools, and then we would come for you not one at a time, but in organized groups with clear objectives and coordinated strategies. She paused, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. The Vicari have an exoskeleton that protects against most physical attacks. It would take us perhaps a year to develop a weapon that could penetrate it efficiently. Perhaps less, if we were motivated. Trill did not respond. His forearms had drawn close to his body, a defensive posture that he probably was not even aware he had adopted. The Thrall representative spoke up, his shimmering form flickering with agitation. You speak of war, of organized destruction. But the Galactic Council exists to prevent such things. There are treaties, agreements, rules of engagement. Yes, Yuna said. And we respect those treaties. Humans are very good at following rules when it benefits us. We are also very good at finding ways around rules when we need to. It is one of our specialties. The Kovathi delegate rumbled deep in his chest, a sound that might have been a growl or might have been nervous laughter. You are threatening us. In the middle of the council hall, you are telling us that humanity could destroy our species if it wanted to. No, Yuna said firmly. I am not threatening anyone. I am answering the question that started this debate. Which species is the greatest predator? You assumed the answer would be measured in hunting success rates and prey size. I am suggesting that you have been measuring the wrong things. She walked forward slowly, moving past the rows of delegates toward the center of the hall. Every eye followed her compound eyes, multiple eyes on stalks, eyes that could see in spectrums humans could not imagine. All watching this small, soft creature who had just explained how her species had conquered their entire world. We did not come to space looking for prey, Yuna continued. We came looking for friends, partners, allies. Humanity does not want to hunt the galaxy. We want to trade with it, learn from it, grow with it. We are not your enemies. She stopped in the center of the hall, directly beneath the holographic image of Earth. But we could be, if we had to be. And I think you should know what that would mean before you finish deciding where to place us in your hierarchy." Counselor Vryn leaned forward, his massive weight shifting audibly. "What are you proposing, Lieutenant Park?" "I am proposing that you reconsider your classification system entirely," Una said. "Not just for humans. For everyone. You are ranking species based on how they hunt in the wild. But every species in this room has moved beyond wild hunting. You all have technology. You all have tools. The question is not who is the best natural predator anymore. The question is who is the most dangerous when they decide to be dangerous." She turned slowly, addressing the entire room. "By that measure, humans are not in the bottom third. And I think everyone in this room knows it now." The silence stretched on. Delegates exchanged glances with members of their own species. Private conversations were happening through subtle signals and movements that humans could not read. The political calculations were visible, even if their contents were hidden. Finally, Vryn spoke again. "The Council will take your testimony under advisement. We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss implications." He did not specify what those implications might be, but everyone understood. The predator hierarchy was no longer a simple ranking system. It had become a question of galactic security. Una nodded politely and returned to her seat beside Dohan. The other delegates watched her the entire way, their expressions ranging from fear to curiosity to something that might have been grudging respect. "That went well," Dohan murmured when she sat down. "We will see," Una replied. "The real discussions happen tomorrow. Today was just the introduction." 3 days later, the Galactic Council completed its deliberations. The official announcement was brief and carefully worded. Earth's classification had been changed from minor predator species, observer status, to apex threat, diplomatic priority. Humanity was no longer a curiosity to be tolerated. They were a power to be engaged with carefully and respectfully. The predator hierarchy debate was suspended indefinitely. Official records stated that the ranking system required fundamental restructuring before any meaningful comparisons could be made. Unofficial sources suggested that 17 species had agreed on only one thing. Competing for the top spot no longer seemed wise when a newcomer had changed the entire definition of what predators could be. Una received orders to remain at Station Meridian as Earth's permanent diplomatic representative. Her first assignment was to attend a private meeting with Counselor Vryn, who wished to discuss areas of mutual interest and concern. Before the meeting, Vryn requested background information on human history. Specifically, he wanted to know about every war humanity had ever fought, every weapon they had ever developed, and every species they had ever driven to extinction. "I want to understand," he told his aides, "exactly what we are dealing with." It took 3 weeks for the historical files to be translated and compiled. When Vryn finished reading them, he canceled all other appointments for a full day. His aides reported that he spent the time in his private chambers, staring out at the stars and saying nothing. At the meeting with Una, he was polite. Very polite. He asked about human culture, human art, human dreams for the future. He did not mention war or weapons or hunting. He treated her like he would treat any dangerous creature, with careful respect and no sudden movements. Una answered all his questions honestly and thoroughly. She spoke about human creativity, human compassion, human love for exploration and discovery. She spoke about the best parts of her species, the parts that had built civilizations and created beauty and reached for the stars. She did not mention the other parts. She did not need to. Vryn already knew. When the meeting ended, he walked her personally to the door of his chambers. This was a great honor, a sign of respect rarely shown to any delegate. "Lieutenant Park," he said as she was leaving, "I have one more question." "Yes, Counselor?" Your people speak of trained and feral predators. You said humanity trained itself, domesticated itself, 12,000 years ago. My question is this. The training you described, the soldiers and weapons and organized hunting, is that training still continuing? Are humans still learning to be more effective? Yuna considered the question carefully. We have never stopped, she said finally. Every generation learns what the previous generation knew. Then they add to it. We have been improving our methods for 12,000 years. We have no intention of stopping. Vryn was silent for a long moment. I see, he said at last. Thank you for your honesty. Yuna nodded and walked away, her footsteps echoing softly in the crystal corridors of Station Meridian. Behind her, Vryn stood in his doorway, watching her go. He did not return to his other duties that day. Instead, he sent a private message to every council member. Marked with the highest priority classification, the message contained only one line. We need to talk about the humans. The age of underestimating Earth was over. The age of very careful diplomacy had begun.